Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Hare Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna 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 Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mukunda Datta Prabhu, thank you for giving your association. Please go ahead and start since we have only 30 minutes.
Yes.
We have to go to the other floor. Please start, Prabhu.
Okay, so quickly. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtapraeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtagi Krishne Swadhamo Bhagate Dharmagnanadibhisaha Kalau Nashtudrishamesha Puranarko Dhunoditaha. This is Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, and tonight we'll speak from Canto 6, Chapter 1, and text number 1. This begins not only the 6th canto, but it begins especially the Ajamilopakhyan, famous story of Ajamila. So it's very important, I think, to read the chapter summaries. Many people don't realize these chapter summaries in the Srimad Bhagavatam were actually written by Srila Prabhupada following from his Guru Maharaj's notes on the same. So virtually they've been written by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So it's interesting to see what he has to say. Before we go further, let me just offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, because I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but by his divine grace, my spiritual master is gradually opening my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge, even though they are shut tightly for so many births. So we're all indebted to his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, for the great mercy that he has shown the modern world in the form of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the ISKCON Society, and the Hare Krishna mantra, all the other gifts of his divine grace. Okay, so chapter 1, the history of the life of Ajamila. And Srila Prabhupada writes here, throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, there are descriptions of 10 subject matters, including creation, subsequent creation, and the planetary systems. Shukdev Goswami, the speaker of the Srimad Bhagavatam, has already described creation, subsequent creation, and the planetary systems in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th cantos. Now, in this 6th canto, which consists of 19 chapters, he will describe Poshanam, the protection by the Lord. I think we mentioned last time, in regards to Vritrasura, that this is the theme of the 6th canto, Poshanam. Poshanam tat anugrahaha. That's back in chapter 10 of the 2nd canto, famous shloka. The Lord maintains the devotees out of his causeless mercy. And that we are seeing in this particular section, the 6th canto. The first chapter relates the history of Ajamila, who was considered a greatly sinful man, but was liberated when 4 order carriers of Lord Vishnu came to rescue him from the hands of the order carriers of Yamaraja. A full description of how he was liberated, having been relieved of the reactions of his sinful life, is given in this chapter. Sinful activities are painful both in this life and in the next. We should know for certain that the cause of all painful life is sinful action. On the path of fruitive work, one certainly commits sinful activities, and therefore, according to the considerations of Karmakanda, different types of atonement are recommended. Such methods of atonement, however, do not free one from ignorance, which is the root of sinful life. Consequently, one is prone to commit sinful activities even after atonement, which is therefore very inadequate for purification. On the path of speculative knowledge, one becomes free from sinful life by understanding things as they are. Therefore, the acquirement of speculative knowledge is also considered a method of atonement. While performing fruitive activities, one can become free from the actions of sinful life through austerity, penance, celibacy, control of the mind and senses, truthfulness, and the practice of mystic yoga. By awakening knowledge, one may also neutralize sinful reactions. Neither of these methods, however, can free one from the tendency to commit sinful activities. By bhakti yoga, one can completely avoid the tendency for sinful life. Other methods are not very feasible. Therefore, the Vedic literature concludes that devotional service is more important than the methods of Karmakanda and Jnanakanda. Only the path of devotional service is auspicious for everyone. Fruitive activities and speculative knowledge cannot independently liberate anyone, but devotional service, independent of karma and jnana, is so potent that one who has fixed his mind at the lotus feet of Krishna is guaranteed not to meet the Yamadutas, the order carriers of Yamaraja, even in dreams. To prove the strength of devotional service, Shukdev Goswami described the history of Ajamila. Ajamila was a resident of Kanya Kubja, modern-day Kanauj. This modern day is in the last century. Modern day means in 2020, it's Kanpur, basically, that area. He was trained by his parents to become a perfect Brahmana by studying the Vedas and following the regulative principles. But because of his past, this youthful Brahmana was somehow attracted by a prostitute. And because of her association, he became most fallen and abandoned all regulative principles. Ajamila begot in the womb of the prostitute 10 sons, the last of whom was called Narayana. At the time of Ajamila's death, when the order carriers of Yamaraj came to take him, he loudly called the name Narayana in fear because he was attached to his youngest son. Thus, he remembered the original Narayana, Lord Vishnu. Although he did not chant the holy name of Narayana completely offenselessly, it acted nonetheless. As soon as he chanted the holy name of Narayana, the order carriers of Lord Vishnu immediately appeared on the scene. A discussion ensued between the order carriers of Lord Vishnu and those of Yamaraj, and by hearing that discussion, Ajamila was liberated. He could then understand the bad effect of fruitive activities and could also understand how exalted is the process of devotional service. Now, it is what time? Here it's 6:30.
8 to 8.
Yeah, only 20 minutes. There's actually enough to speak on just from this chapter summary. It's up to you if you want to continue on, but I think there's a lot to talk about already.
No, go ahead on the summary.
So
Yes.
Prabhupada has basically summarized the entire story of Ajamila. So we can consider some of the things that he said. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prasharani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarani. I've already mentioned that in the second canto we have a list of the 10 topics that Srimad Bhagavatam discusses. In general, Puranas discuss 10 topics. Sometimes it's considered that a Purana will discuss 5 topics. So there are different systems of classification. But if we look at 10 topics, which Prabhupada is doing here, then the topic of this canto is Poshanam, protection by the Lord. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, I believe it's in his commentary, he gives us an overview of this situation as well. And he mentions that in this 6th canto, we have devotees who are good devotees and devotees who are failures as well. He actually mentions that the poshanam, the protection offered by the Lord, is given even to those who have transgressed the laws of dharma, and is certainly therefore given to the devotees as well. That's an important thing to take note of. But Sridhar Swami, in his commentary on this 6th canto, opens up his comments with obeisances unto his worshipful deity. Sridhar Swami is considered to have been a Narasingha Upasaka, worshipper of Lord Narasimhadev. And so in his commentary, he begins by saying, Punyaranye Narasimhaika Nama Singho Virajate Yannarataha Palayante Mahakalmasha Kunjaraha. That means that in the forest of pious and, by implication, also impious activities, the name of Lord Narasimha is the only lion roaming there, by the sound of whose name the elephants of great sinful reactions will run in terror. They will flee in fear. Mahakalmasha Kunjaraha, great elephants that are the sinful reactions of living beings in this world. And anyway, we're here in this material world, and we are addicted to fruitive activities. When you are addicted to fruitive activities, it is not that you're always going to commit only pious activities. You're going to commit some sins. It's almost invariable. Now, if this was the situation so many thousands of years ago with the young Brahmana named Ajamila, that he just happened to see a young, low-class Shudra couple engaged in enjoying each other's company the way young people do sometimes, his mind was completely agitated by that. Then what to speak of 2020, when this is broadcast into our homes via our cell phones, whether we like it or not. And it's on billboards everywhere you go. The association is so infected everywhere that it's virtually guaranteed that all you have to do is lead a completely, quote unquote, normal life in the modern world in 2020, and you're pretty much guaranteed you will go to hell, because that association is so pungent. And we know from Bhagavad Gita, Sangat Sanjayate Kamaha. Our desires are determined by the association that we get. Association, Sangha. Samyak Gachati Iti Sangha. Sangha means everything that goes together. What it is you desire, what it is you're thinking, what you see, feel, hear, touch, taste, smell, etc. Think about all these things together. This is considered to be Sangha. Samyak means all together. It's a conglomerate, like a gestalt. And this Sangha is what drives us on in material existence, from pious activities to impious activities, because we are controlled by the three modes of material nature. Krishna tells us early on in Bhagavad Gita, Prakritehi kriyamanani gunaihi karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimuhatma kartaham iti manyate. Fools, we think that we are independent in this world, but in fact our every activity is impelled or compelled by the pushings of these three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance. Sometimes we are very pious, clean brahmanas, especially when we are in our Jupiter period. And sometimes we're almost like demons on 2 feet or animals on 2 legs, Dvipada Pashus, committing so many sinful activities when we're in the mode of ignorance. Sometimes we're just crazy, and sometimes we're brilliant. Sometimes we're healthy, sometimes we're rich, we're poor, we're whatever. All the stunning variety of what Maya has to offer us in this material world is frightful. And we're pushed along this process, birth after birth after birth. E Brahmanda Brahmite Konu Bhaktiban Jeev, Guru Krishna Kripa Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. Until finally, after having wandered throughout 8,400,000 different species of life, in accordance with the fruits of our pious and impious deeds, we may come in contact with a Vaishnava. We may come in contact especially with a bona fide spiritual master. When that happens, then we have a chance to really do something, make some real progress. We talk about progress, pragati. What does progress mean? There's vertical progress. Progress means you're moving up, actually. So-called progress in this world, it is generally horizontal progress. You're actually not going anywhere. You're just going around and around and around in this cycle. Temporarily, you may be pious, but you're going to come back down again. The Sanskrit poet Kalidas, he has written in his Dutta, famous kavya work, that it's like the spokes of a wheel. When a wheel is spinning very fast, it just becomes a blur. You can't really make out the individual spokes. So he says, how significant is it really that one spoke is on the top upper portion of the wheel during one split second? Because the same spoke is going to be at the bottom of the wheel within a split second. That is the significance of any of our achievements in this material world. Whether we're great sinners or great saints, it doesn't really make a difference. Until we awaken pure knowledge of the self, and that's best done through Krishna consciousness, then we can't really get out of this cycle of repeated birth and death, even if we look to be okay right now. That's why we should never be complacent. We may have all that we need right now. We may have sanity, we may have intelligence, we may have great capability, we may have a pleasing disposition, we may have popularity, we may have so many supportive friends and relatives and so much influence in society. We may be able to do things, we may make a difference from a mundane perspective, but ultimately it's all going to be lost. That is sure, certain. So none of these things are actually that significant. The real significant thing is when somehow or other we become responsive to the, endeavors of the Supreme Lord to reawaken us to our eternal constitutional position. The Lord usually does that through his devotees. So that is the singular, significant event that can happen when one becomes a human being. One can come in contact with pure devotees. And this is what happened to Ajamila. He had what they call in modern parlance a near-death experience. He was like one of those guys who's on the operating table and suddenly he's dead, flatlines, and he comes back after some time. And then he has some realization of what was going on when he was supposedly dead. So Ajamila, this happened, and he had such a lucid experience. He actually witnessed this entire conversation between the Yamadutas and the Vishnu Dutas, arguing about whose jurisdiction covers this guy. Whose jurisdiction is he in? So we know the Vishnu Dutas won. We can hear in the coming verses, coming chapters, the section of the Bhagavatam. Ajamila was very lucky, and he got a second chance. We've published that book, BBT has published excerpts from this passage of the Bhagavatam, second chance. And he was able to realize the importance of cultivating spiritual life now while we can. When I was in the Pacific Northwest in the 1990s, there were many devotees were there preaching, and they printed up these mantra cards that we distribute on Harinam Sankirtanam. It gives the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then the caption reads, please chant this mantra while you can. The implication, it's supposed to spur us into thought that, wait a minute, what does that mean? Maybe I won't always be able to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. And it's a fact. You'll not always be able to see the deity. So do it now while you can. You'll not always have the opportunity to perform sadhana bhakti, especially if China wins the next election. Or you may not be able to associate with devotees. Nowadays, you can't even breathe freely on the street without risking your life. So we should appreciate what we've been given, and we should take advantage of it while we can. These are just a few things. Unfortunately, the time has run out, and I wanted to leave a little time for questions, if anybody has any questions. There's so much to discuss here. There's really just so much. But we've covered a few things at least. The futility of sinful and pious activities don't really purify the heart. They cannot remove the ignorance that is at the root of our decision. And it's always a decision to act in this way or to act in that way. And that ignorance is generally bringing us down. The basis of all sinful reactions, or the sinful activities, I mean to say, is the ignorance that precipitates them. Chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra eradicates that ignorance. It gives us a fighting chance at really cutting this out altogether, once and for all, if that's what we want. So we hear Srimad Bhagavatam in good association, and we follow the process as much as we can. As a result of the good association that we take, it's always directly correlative to the amount and quality of the association that we take. We've already described that. So this is what human life is for, and Ajamil is such a wonderful story because he shows us he wasn't perfect, just like we're not perfect. He made big mistakes in his life, maybe even bigger mistakes than some of us have made. But he was really, really fortunate that he got a second chance, and he took advantage of it while he could. And that's just one aspect. The role of the holy name in this is another major element of the story. Maybe we can talk about it a little bit later. But let me stop right now, and if anybody has any questions, we can try to deal with those. I have to run again at 7 o'clock. That's in about 10 minutes. I have another class in South India. So if anybody has any questions now, we can discuss, or any comments as well, please feel free.
Dear devotees, please go ahead. Anybody has a question? If no question, maybe I will ask. Prabhu, the point you are making is also, I think, is from Bhagavad Gita. We see that Krishna is telling Arjuna, the lust is situated in mind, intelligence, and senses. So, if we can elaborate a little more, which can help. devotees on the line. So, yeah, if you can
So-
elaborate some practical application, how we can deal with that.
Once a disciple, whom I won't name, came to Srila Prabhupada. He was a young man at that time. And he frankly admitted to Srila Prabhupada that he had problem with lust. And he was trying to do the right thing. He approached his spiritual master to see what could be done. And Srila Prabhupada told him, you just chant Hare Krishna, everything will be fine. And then the disciple was thinking for a moment. He said, but Srila Prabhupada, actually I do chant Hare Krishna. Still I have this problem. Srila Prabhupada didn't really want to take that answer. He just thundered back at his disciple. He said, no, it's not true. When you become agitated, you do not take shelter of the holy name, you take shelter of your agitation. This is our problem. It's a choice. It's always a choice. And we have such an easy choice. Really, all we have to do is chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And it is sure that Krishna will help us. He's always responsive. He may not respond in the way that we expect or in the way that we want, or even when we think it's necessary, but he is always responsive. So as you said, it's in our minds, it's in our intelligence, it's in our senses, it's all pervading. What does that mean? That means that our mind-body complex is by nature contaminated. And this is why Krishna speaks in chapter 16, but also elsewhere, of the need for what he calls sattva samshuddhi. Sattva samshuddhi. Samshuddhi means complete purification. Sattva means, in this context, not the mode of goodness, but your existence. Sattva, beingness, is a literal translation. Your state of being, if you will. That has to be purified. And there is a program for purifying that. It's called varnashram dharma, or in other words, it's called being a normal human being. And if we act according to the injunctions of Shastra, which are what really constitute varnashram dharma, or it's synonymous with karma in the positive sense, piety, pious action, then automatically we're going to be at least we won't be degraded. If we choose, we can be elevated. If we choose, we don't necessarily have to be elevated. We can remain in this world. I want to say baseline, substrate of Krishna consciousness, we can advance further by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It seems as if Srila Prabhupada saw this in the last 3 or 4 years that he was with us, because he was increasingly boiling the milk, as he called it, refining our society on a social level. And he did this through regulative principles, Shastric injunctions, and traditional conventions of human and social behavior that actually do have the effect of purifying our subtle body and our gross body. That's called sattva samshuddhi. So it's important. And Krishna says in chapter 7, text number 28, that those who have adopted this process without envy, then they will gain a benefit from it. They will find that to sustain a mature commitment to pure devotional service is not as difficult as when we're trying to, so to speak, light damp wood on fire. It doesn't really work that easily. That's a very quick answer to a very quick question in the little time that we have. Is it okay?
Yep, thank you, Prabhu. I remember the Sattva Samshuddhi, where in Bhagavad Gita, again, Prabhupada is quoting that Ahara Suddho, Sattva Suddhe,
yes, very good.
Smriti Lambe, Sarva Granthina.
Exactly. I was thinking of, as I said in Bhagavad Gita, it's one of the first items that Krishna mentions as characteristic of real knowledge. Abhayam sattva samshuddhir, ityadi. But the same idea is there.
Yes.
Here,
Thank you.
we should not minimize the importance of following Shastric conventions, that is social and personal hygiene, and mundane dharma is actually very important in Krishna consciousness if we are conditioned souls, which most of us are. So it helps. Anything else?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you very much. All is to you. All is to Prabhupada. Anybody else has any questions? Only 1 more minute is there. Madhupati Prabhu, anything?
Maybe this can be continued next time.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's plenty to talk about. Just with we're not even done with the chapter summary yet. What to speak of the first verse? There's long commentary on verse number 1, which I didn't even have time to touch on tonight. So yeah, we can certainly do that if you
Hare
wish.
Krishna Prabhuji, I have a question.
Okay. Quickly, please.
Yes. In which yuga the Ajamila story happened?
Okay. Off the top of my head, I don't recall. But if you look through the summary and the chapter, I'm sure it must be mentioned there somewhere. Otherwise, I'll look it up and I can tell you next time.
All right. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay. Thank you very much. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Haribo.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So we'll have quick